Paradox Interactive games do have an issue where majority of them are not really playable or enjoyable in the late game simply because of the power creep where you get insanely overpowered, especially in games like EU4, CK3, and there's not really much of a challenge or contender to make that particular save still playable. Now, I'm not speaking for everybody. I know that a lot of the community enjoys the late game. I'm just speaking for myself and the part of the community that feels like late game should have some specific flavor to make it more enjoyable. That's why today I also want to talk about EU5's late game, what I've managed to see from my 200 hours of playing EU5, as well as what I'm seeing from the current development diaries on EU5 from the forums. I think it's time we not only talk about the problem with the late game in EU5, but we also talk about the balance, the stacking of modifiers, and how ready we expect the game to be out within this year, or maybe not, maybe next year, who's to say. Before we begin this video, I really want you to tell me and be honest with me, in EU4, what is usually the year when you stop playing the game, and why do you stop playing the game around that particular period? I'm gonna use your comments, the most liked comments, for my next EU5 video, because the next video is gonna be a community video. I want your voice to be heard, and I want your feedback to be directly delivered, because it's time that we make ourselves heard as a community and talk about everything, not just about the balance and the modifier stacking at the late game issue. Talk about what you would like to see in the game, such as, I don't know, mission trees, ideas, and what you feel you do not like about what you're seeing from the current gameplay videos out or from the forums about EU5, and what you like, because I think the developers deserve to know both sides. I'm going to start by going through the more recent development diary on the Black Death, because this really highlights a lot of the things that I was talking about earlier with balance as well as flavor in the game. So compared to the Black Death situation that I had when I had access to the game, this is a completely different story. I don't know if this is a result of feedback from people or what happened, but this is 10 times better than what it was before, and I genuinely feel this is likely what it's going to be like in the final version before they release the game, since it has a lot of extra options now. So first off, if you don't know what the Black Death is, it is a situation in Europa Universalis 5. It triggers in 1346. Also, we have some new interface things we're going to go through in a few seconds here, including the Age of Renaissance here shows differently. But yeah, so it triggers in the Golden Horde. In their particular game, it triggered in Dardaling, and it started spreading from the Golden Horde. If we take a look at where it started in my particular save game in my Byzantium video, it was in Dukovznitskoye. That's also in the Golden Horde, at some part of the Golden Horde, basically. You have a few options when it begins before your locations are affected. So you have the option of isolating the country and procuring remedies. Then once you have affected locations, that changes. You got more options in that case. So isolating the country, in essence, affects what you do from a trade perspective. It can kind of destroy your economy a little bit, but at the same time, it has the option of lowering the amount of people that die. You will eventually contract the plague. Even if you isolate the country, it makes no difference. The plague will still arrive in your country. You're just basically delaying the inevitable, more or less. And personally, from the games that I had in my 200 hours of playing EU5, I didn't notice that much of a difference between isolating and not isolating the country. Clear example, in this game, in my Byzantium game, if you see over at the top, I had 2.82 million people when the plague began, and taking aside the expansion I gained from pops, by the time that the plague finished, I had roughly around 1.8 million. Let's say another 400,000 I gained from conquering provinces. So I'd say roughly 1 million dead from the plague. And I had checked in previous saves, it was about the same when I isolated the country and when I didn't isolate the country. I'm sure that has been changed in the internal version that Paradox has, obviously, right? Because this is balance in the process of developing the game is the last thing that happens. They even told us, obviously, that what we got was not the finalized balanced version of the game. It was just that temporary version that we were able to use to get an idea of what the game is about, right? But the thing is, balance, not only from Paradox's perspective, from what I at least understand is their perspective, balance happens at the end. So before you release the game, once you finished adding all the content, all the quote-unquote flavor, you balance the game, so when it's released, it's not unplayable because it's too unbalanced, stuff's not too overpowered, stuff is not too nerfed and such, right? Once we finish with this first dev diary here, I'm gonna give you my honest opinion on the balance and what really needs to be changed. I hope it's already been changed. I obviously don't have any info on what's happening in the development team, so maybe everything I say has already been done. But if it hasn't been done, and hopefully somebody from the development team watches this video, then they get an idea of what me as well as my community wants from the game from a balance perspective, because what I'm saying is not just my opinion here, it's also me quoting the most liked comments from my EU5 videos as a means of letting the devs maybe understand what the community likes, or at least what a fraction of the community likes, because I'm not going to mention all the comments. I'm only going to mention the ones that had the highest amount of likes, obviously, because that gives me the impression that that's what most of the community wants from the game, right? So same here. If you have any feedback for them about in particular balance of the game, make sure you leave the comments in the comment section below. If you guys agree with that person, leave a like on his comment so I can know for future reference. I will be actually going to the comment section in the next video for EU5 referencing your comments in particular, so Paradox can see those comments as I read them out if they ever watch my videos. I don't know if they do or not. Now, as the Black Death spreads, in our case, in Paradox's case, we see it spread to Bohemia and Poland. You get more options. So we see the origin in Dardeling. We see a couple of people started to pass away, and we have one affected location. That means you have more actions now, including main action, food and trade action, disease control action, and social actions. So that's a lot more actions that I had. When I got the game, I had 3 options. I had food and trade actions, which allowed me to isolate the country or repeal the isolation on the country. And when you repeal the isolation on the country, by the way, it opened the markets, and when you isolated it, it closed the markets, basically. I also had disease and control actions, like we see here. So I had procure remedies, segregate the infected, and expel the sick. And then we also have social actions, which I had as well, which was sponsor mass forgiveness and present scapegoat. There is pros and cons to every single one of these actions. Move court into hiding will lower the estate satisfaction equilibrium by a certain amount for each of the estates. And also take note, it says here that it costs 10 stability to move court into hiding. That is very accurate. It basically costs stability for pretty much everything in the game, and in my opinion, that's one of the better things because it is such a nice little touch. It really makes stability one of the most important currencies in the game. Also, from my games, I've never had people, I mean main characters in my court die from the plague. So I'm assuming from the fact that they made intentionally move court into hiding an interaction when you get the plague, it means that you will have main characters actually die from the plague in the current version of the game, right? Because in the one I had, they didn't. At least for me, they didn't. Maybe there was a percentage chance of them dying and they just never died because they were Byzantine Chads. Who's to say? To say. Isolate the cities is a new one. So I had isolate the country. I did not have isolate the cities. We still have apparently isolate the country. So isolate the cities apparently gives you monthly control, production efficiency reduction, market attraction, bubonic plague impact minus 80% is really good though. Like minus 80% makes me think that the cities will see significantly less population drop, which is really, really important. And for just 5% estate satisfaction, it is definitely worth it. Yeah, again, control the food market, very new. This wasn't around. I'm glad to see that. It's really a very unique interaction and unique way of handling this particular situation, right? Isolate the country we had from before. So in this version that they're showing right now, it gives burger state satisfaction equilibrium, banning foreign imports and exports, traditionalism and traditional economy increase for values. Procure remedies, we gain instant stability boost, we get some legitimacy, and we get the modifier procure remedies and paying to procure remedies. Monthly gold for paying for procure remedies, that's increased. It was 1. So this is a balance change right here. I'm assuming it was way too cheap before. Now it's a lot more expensive to procure remedies, which makes sense. That's a fair price still, 2.75. I mean, depending on your size, of course, too. I was paying flat out 1 as the Byzantine Empire when I had the coastline of Anatolia and all of Greece. So that was pretty cheap. Segregating the infected gives the same thing. Only thing that changed here is it's called disease resistance rather than plague resistance. It was called plague resistance. So I'm guessing this is more of a generalized term, which is applied to all diseases, not just the plague, because obviously some diseases are not plagues, right? They're just diseases. Expel the Sick is something that gives you access to the Pest House. Now, the Pest House is a building you can build after you've expelled the Sick, and it will give you 30% plague resistance wherever that building has been built, but it also increases your unrest by 10%. Sponsoring Mass Forgiveness gives stability increase, but it also increases the clergy power, and it lowers the disease resistance. So you get more people dying from disease from sponsoring Mass Forgiveness. So I'm not sure this is worth it. Plus, you are paying for clerical services monthly. Again, this has been, I believe, increased a little bit too. Present Scapegoats, my personal favorite, right? Best thing to do when you have the plague. Blame everybody else. Also gives a little bit of flat stability, and Find the Culprits will give population conversion speed increase. Tolerance to the True Faith +1. This is new. So it did not give conversion speed before. It did not give Tolerance of True Faith +1. It only gave everything else that you see here, minus these two ones in the middle. So these are new. I'm glad to see this because honestly, it was not worth presenting Scapegoats in the way it was before. At least now, by presenting Scapegoats, you do get a bit of conversion speed. You get some Tolerance to True Faith. So as the Byzantines, at least, I probably would have gone for this if I had these two modifiers. The way it was before, it was just not worth it. I never used to go for this because it was just a debuff, really. There are a lot of events that also trigger when the plague is active. Some might give you some money in exchange for some estate satisfaction. Some might give you some temporary bonuses and debuffs at the same time. Some areas will start getting the bubonic plague spreading around, which is pretty annoying. Especially, I remember as Brandenburg, I got rid of the plague and I got one of these silly ass freaking events, and it came back and it started going around my country again, ravaging all my provinces again after I got rid of it. It was so freaking annoying. One more thing is I like the speed at which the plague spreads, right? So it starts in 1346 always, unless you change that, and within the first few months, not many people die, a few 100,000, but I believe after 2 years it's like 50 million, 45 to 50 million after 2 years only. And by 1352 the plague is pretty much over. The situation is not done, but the plague is pretty much spread everywhere. People have gotten their immunity, or better yet, resistance to the plague build up. So even if it does spawn again, it's not going to kill that many people anymore. That's one thing that I really like about the plague mechanic. And let me see if I can show you from my particular video here. We had 150 million people dead by what year is this? 1361, right? So pretty much by the end of the plague, because there was no more plague, it was just small pockets of plague, usually left over in Iraq, Iran. That area is the last one that usually gets rid of the plague, and then the situation disappears. But by the end, roughly 150 million, half of the world population is dead. I don't know how it is in the newer versions, but that's how it was previously, and it really made the game work so much better. I mean, I hate saying this, but the plague is kind of necessary to fix the game start. You know what I mean? It like makes the game more fluid. But yeah, the people that are left over though, they do have immunity to the game, right? To the plague. So even if it triggers again, it's not going to kill that many. It's going to kill very, very few people in comparison to what it was before. Look at that. Current deaths for my particular save was 1.008 million, and there are no more locations in my country, at least, that are affected by it. I love that they also started showing some more map pictures, and I saw there's some new videos also on their YouTube channel that shows, of course, gameplay pictures, gameplay videos, so you see more of the map. And I have to say, I like it. I've seen some negative comments about this in some of my previous videos that said that the graphics look a little bit dated, they look a little bit like 2010 or whatever. I don't know. I personally actually like it. It's not too much you can, end of the day, guys, it's a map game, okay? There's not too much you can do to a map to make it look, I don't know, real life. I mean, it's still a map game, and in my opinion, it's really, really well done. I like it. I genuinely like it. Only complaint is some of the shapes of the provinces are not great, because I have certain roleplay things that I have in my brain, and I cannot enact those roleplay situations with these shapes. Like, look at this, right? So this is obviously in Prussia, or sorry, Western Poland, right? I cannot get historical German Empire borders with this. This is not possible. We need to fix this. Before the game is out, we have to fix this to make sure I can get my German Empire Borders videos done. Please, I love you. I really need this, please. We see here another image. I'm assuming this is at the height of the plague, or height, or better yet, beginning of the plague, not height, because there's only 29 million deaths, right? In Poland itself, 354,000 deaths. I really wish I could see the year so I can get a better idea of what's happening here. We see the graph with the population decline in Poland itself. Holy mother of God. Also, I have to say, it's a good moment to replace populations with other populations when the plague happens. So, for example, as Brandenburg, I had an easier time converting everybody, assimilating everybody to Brandenburgian culture because there was less people to assimilate, right? There are buildings that you can build to facilitate passing through the plague, I guess you could say. We see here some of them available. The hospital. Now, I also have to say this is different. If you guys remember my video, and if you don't, I'm going to show you right now. This is what it was like when you go to the building interface back then. So they've made some significant changes to the UI. I've seen some people commenting in my previous video on EU5 that for sure they have a better UI internally, and somebody was like, no, that's not true. Clearly this is not the same with this. Now, whether this is better or worse is a question I have for you. My take on this, I don't like it. I think it's good, it's better, it's an improvement, but it's not there. Why? And I'll give very, very specifics why. The icons are too small. I would like this to be a little bit bigger. You have so much space here. Use this space. Make this a little bit bigger. Put the information in the whole tab. What is this below it for? If it's for something, put that something there. If it's not for something, remove it. Make this bigger. Why is this icon so small and the background so big? I get this is a hospital icon. Make the whole freaking thing. Make it half of this the hospital so I can see that it's a hospital. My point is that I like it. I get why it's like this. It's like chic and stuff, right? But I got dyslexia. I don't know about you guys. I actually have dyslexia. And for me, I struggle when I have these kind of like small little numbers mixed in with one another. So maybe this is just particular to me. Maybe you guys have a different opinion on this, but I just don't want to see all this wasted space around. Make something out of this. I see here, for example, that they show this is a building that I'm assuming belongs to Albania or is built in Albania or whatever the case. This doesn't take that much space. This rest of here, plug the whole thing, make it big, and then put the population here and the laborers on the side here or whatever this is, right? So we see better. I don't know, just my opinion at least. But I do like the fact that it's more highlighted though. I like the color changes. The color changes are huge. I would like to see more color coding for buildings than there already is in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. I think that not many people share that actually. And I do like to see also the resources here shown as well as the price of the resources, right? So we see here, for example, there's a high cost for these particular resources. I believe paper, tar, and whatever this is, and a low cost for fiber and whatever the schnitzel this is, weapons or whatever, I don't remember. Oh, actually he mentions here it is the year 1350. So this is what in 1350 it looks like. 54 million deaths. That is a massive balance change. In 1350, almost in all of my games, I had about 100 million dead. 100 million, okay? So if we go from 100 million to 54 million in the same year, yeah, that is a massive difference. And now I also want to point out some things here. Before we do that, let's also go through the comment section, because Pavia, one of my favorite developers in Paradox Tinto, really awesome dude, by the way. Somebody asked him, will the Black Death sweep across the entire old world as it originally did, or will it be primarily confined to Europe? It's going to be everywhere, all the world. I'm talking Africa, Asia, Europe. At least that's how it was in my game. Let's see how it is in his game here. We see Sultanate of Delhi, most of the people dead. It doesn't show Ming Yuan. It should show Yuan though. Maybe it does not show Yuan because he doesn't have information on Yuan. Could be, I don't know. But in my games, it definitely had most of the people dead in Yuan. When I hovered over it, usually it was Delhi or Central Doab or whatever second, and Yuan was always first with the amount of deaths. Maybe. I'm a little bit surprised actually with the countries shown there, because the Golden Horde should be one of the more affected ones. He also shows us the options. Black Death outbreak here, 1346. You can also disable it, or you can make it random, and origin is Central Asia or random. Those are the only two options as far as I remember. Oh, actually he mentions this. So he says that we've addressed the resistance to the disease in several regions, of which China is the most important. The higher the resistance, the less time and impact the disease has in our game. On top of that, please take into account that numbers are a matter of constant rebalance, Black Death probably a situation that has received more balance changes since it was first implemented in the game, since it's probably the most impactful. It 100% is the most impactful. So that explains it. So that means that this is the current version then, or is it the amount of dead? So we have 59 million in 1350 compared to 100 plus million that I had. That actually means that Delhi will be affected whilst Yuan is not going to. So maybe they gave the Chinese some type of disease resistance, so there's 50 million less people dead, or maybe it just spreads to China a little bit slower. So that means we're going to get 100 million by 1352, 1354 once it spreads to China. I don't know. That is really interesting to see though. That is a massive balance change. I remember some other people were talking about how Eastern Europe should see some resistance to plague, like populations like Poles, Romanians, Russians, Ukrainians should see some changes to the mechanic where they get some disease resistance, as reality is that Eastern Europe was a lot less affected by the Black Death, seeing as they had encountered various types of plagues in the past, likely even this one at some point, but on a smaller scale. And yes, historically a lot less people died in Eastern Europe than they did in Western Europe, probably also because there was less population in Eastern Europe. But whatever the case, it did allow for certain countries like Poland, for example, Muscovy, to get stronger than other countries as they lost less population and they managed to get ahead of their neighbors, right? So maybe they did that too, because I'm not seeing Poland in the top 5 nations that have lost pops here. Oh, this is a really good question from Macbeth the Kind. One of the recurrent points in feedback from YouTubers who got to play the early build of EU5 not a long time ago was that the Black Death didn't feel impactful long in term. You took a financial hit in the short term from trade collapsing, but since so much wealth generation is tied to building employment and the vast majority of the population in the early game is subsistence farming peasants, losing a third of your population had virtually no economic impact since those buildings would be repopulated within a few short years. Is the team aware of this, and do they consider it a problem that needs to be solved, namely how to make the annihilation of every deadweight population a painful loss that will be felt for generations? I'm actually curious who said this. Genuinely curious who said this. I know it's not me because I don't have this opinion. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So let's see what Johan says. He said that some of them have that opinion. They fail to account for accumulated growth, like if you invest 1,000 or 500 euros today, which is more likely to give more money long term. Here's my take on this. The impact is there, right? No matter who you play as, losing half of your population will pretty much just halven your income. And there's no such thing as dead weight population. I don't know where that comes from, because the more population you have, if you invest in the right buildings, what happens is more of that population is going to have the chance to be quote unquote promoted, right, to better jobs, laborers or whatever other jobs, clergymen or whatever. Losing a lot of that population, not only do you need to wait for them to promote, but you also need to wait for them to grow, right, so you can promote them afterward. There are some things, I'm actually going on the opposite spectrum of whoever said that, because there are certain things that will make it easier for certain nations to gain population, right? Certain nations can abuse their very unique mechanics of expansion, very unique mechanics of being able to have slaves early on to fill up certain positions, lower positions in like mines and such, right? But as you progress, having slaves is actually a massive debuff because you cannot promote those pops, right? And then you end up with lacking a lot of pops for specific jobs later in the campaign. Although, let's just say that, I hate saying this, man, I don't want to do this to the game before it's even out, because like I said, we don't know what the current balance of the game is. I'm just saying based on what's available, and obviously we don't have the full game available to see what the changes have been, right? But from what I played, the game after the 1500s, let's say 1600s, is done. I mean, you will get really, really strong. There are chances that some other nations will get very strong as well, AI nations, and you can compete with them, but more likely you will get way stronger than the AI. So you end up with one of those situations where, what am I doing now? Why do I need to play this? It's the age-old problem that Paradox games have, where the late game is not as fun as the early game. Don't get me wrong, compared to EU4, late game in EU5, it's honestly 5 to 6 times better, okay? It is way better than EU4 late game, like actually better. And they have scripted stuff, although not as much, I imagine, as they will have in the release version, at least from what I played, but it's still not there. And the reason why it's not not there is because of the snowball. And I'm not talking in particular about the financial snowball, because yes, I do know that they fixed some issues with the financial snowball. I do know that they made it so you get significantly less money from trade, which was the easiest way to get insane amounts of money. But that's not it. That's not the problem. The problem is not the financial snowball. The problem is the modifier stack. And we get to the second part of my issues. Guys, there is a lot of different modifiers compared to EU4, and I really mean a lot more different modifiers. The game is already 10 times better than EU4. I genuinely got depressed from not being able to play EU5 anymore, so that should tell you that the game is definitely good. It's already done from a lot of perspectives, but I want it to be perfect, okay? And I have to say that you still can stack modifiers in EU5, and you can stack it to an insane amount, okay? Let me give you some concrete proof of that. Every single age you unlock will give you more modifiers that stack. For example, you get control impact on war score, which means the impact that low control has on war score is lowered with every single passing age. So in the age of discovery, it's minus 40%. Age of reformation, the next stage, is minus 60%. Age of revolutions, it's minus 100%. So whatever the control is in a province, it has no impact on war score anymore in the last stage. That's one of the things, right? There's other stuff like, for example, conversion speed is increased, war score cost is lowered, speed of integration is increased. Age of revolutions gives minus 10 war score cost, for example. Age of absolutism gives speed of integration plus 25%. This is just the ages when you reach those ages, right? But it's not the advances, the technologies, because there's a lot of them that will follow up and they will double down on these particular modifiers. So if you add all of these up, you also add the government reforms for certain unique nations, you add certain maybe even events that add up to that, you can end up with minus 80, maybe even minus 95% war score cost by the last stage, which means you can do a world conquest. And I know this sucks to say, because I know a lot of you guys enjoy doing world conquest, but I don't want to do a world conquest in EU5. You know why? I don't think that's realistic. I don't think it's realistic for Ulm or, I don't know, freaking Herzogenbusch to do a freaking world conquest by the 1800s. It's not. It's just not. It should be impossible, but it's not impossible. Is that a good thing? It's a good thing for all the tryhards and the sweats. Congratulations, you have your stacking of modifiers. It's there. But I actually like the more roleplay part of the game. I like the more realistic part of the game, right? That's why I like the early age, because the first 200 years, it is so difficult to expand. It's just really, really tough. It's hard to get your foothold anywhere. And then all of a sudden after the 1600, it's like, oh, I got all the money I need. I got all the modifiers I need. Let me, oh, click, click, click. I deleted this country. Oh, it's my name's there. Oh, I'm painting another country with my color. Oh, I'm bored. I just destroyed my 10 neighbors. What the hell is going, why is it so easy all of a sudden? So yeah, again, take note. This was from the early version I got. I'm sure they probably even fixed that issue. I'm just saying it in case they haven't, so they know my opinion, and the people that I know follow me, their opinion too is that they probably want more roleplay-ish. Not all. Again, I know the Sweat Lords, they will definitely love hearing that you can do a world conquest, especially as some nations. The Timurids are so easy to do world conquest. Oh, not to mention, you can definitely restore the Holy Roman Empire by the 1400s. By 1444, you already have the HRE done a while back. So yeah, I'm sure they probably know about that too, because I know some other creators have definitely told them about that. So that likely is fixed. I don't know about the late game, because I don't know how many people managed to get to the late game to give that feedback, right? But I genuinely hope that they tone down the late game a lot more. I just want them to make it as realistic as you progress, right? Oh, and another thing, I love the building tier. That's a massive bonus. I never expected I would enjoy as much. The fact that you upgrade your buildings as you progress and you go from a basic agrarian society to an early semi-manufacturing to a early industrial and mid-industrial society. It's really good. That's really, really good. So I don't give only negative stuff. I'm only giving some good stuff, so you guys know as well, right? So even into the late game, that is extremely well done in my opinion. Oh, we actually see the pest house here. Somebody mentions, what will the pest house give? Yep, disease resistance, unrest. Nothing changed there. There is in fact a disease tab in geopolitics, and you have different types of diseases. We see here the bubonic plague, which triggered in 1346. That's at the top of the disease tab. There's more. There's great pestilence, which is similar to the bubonic plague, but it's a different type of disease. Now, speaking of this, my games that ended up until the 1700s, the rest of the diseases were very underwhelming. overwhelming. Now, this previous dev diary reminds me a little bit of another balance issue that I would like to talk about, namely the fact that if you play as small nations, and I'm talking really tiny theocratic nations where you have a lot of clergy, which means you have a lot of literacy, right? That means you get more innovation, and as such you research things a little bit faster than other nations. I don't think that's okay. I like it from a flavor perspective in the sense that I like playing super tall as this tiny little Schnitzeldorf in Germany and then getting freaking tech way above the major nations, but I don't think that's realistic, because sure, they did have higher literacy, but it doesn't mean that they can research freaking gunpowder before a massive empire which has the option of implementing and doing that research. Don't get me wrong, I like it, I really do, but maybe they should have some penalty to it also. Now, the previous development diary is something that also plays into me thinking the game is coming out in November of this year or around the end of the year. So we did have the mandala system, however, did not give the cultural capacity plus 10, which is actually a massive amount of cultural capacity, by the way. It's actually really, really good. I also don't remember seeing the 3 departments, which I like to see actually. Administrative efficiency plus 10 is huge. Possible government reforms plus 1. So this is basically a free government reform. That is insane, guys. I love this. And they also get a unique privilege as well here that gives max rural control plus 5%. That is extremely huge as well, especially if you can give this early in the campaign. It's an Age of Traditions unlock, so definitely this is massive at the start of the campaign. The Trang Huo Don tactics is a completely new one also, because I remember when I was checking through the Vietnamese advances, they did not have any Vietnamese named ones that I could remember, so this is absolutely added afterwards. All of these, I don't remember any of these in the Age of Traditions or Age of Renaissance, and this leads me to believe that the game is a lot closer to release than I originally thought it would be. And some of these are actually really insane. Speed of integration goes back to my point of, as you progress in ages, you get a lot of these particular modifiers stacked up, which makes the late game, I don't want to say boring, because it's not boring, but it just makes it very easy. It just makes it really, really easy. Either they tone this stuff down or they make some massive debuffs in the late game, like, I don't know, say some huge outbreaks or some specific huge wars that crush all the nations, or some nations that get massive, I don't know. Yeah, infantry power, which is infantry combat ability, and firearm output plus 10 is also amazing, and it's in the Age of Discovery, so that's really early on, the 3rd age. Crown power also really big, but it's very late, so I guess it makes sense. That being said, by that age of Revolutions, you already have super high crown power anyway, because you're going to be revoking most of the privileges, so it just doubles down on something that already will be very powerful. I do absolutely love the map of the Khmer Empire. Such a massive difference with this part of the world today and in the 1400s compared to how it was in the peak of the Khmer Empire, right? They also get their unique building, the Barai, which is an infrastructure building. And again, when it comes to the interface, I would like to see this changed, right? Again, maybe it's just the dyslexic part of my brain, but I would like to see this a little bit bigger, more smoothly integrated, maybe rearranged somehow so it's not convoluted. It feels like all the writing is in one small area and then there's so much space that's just wasted, basically. At least that's how I feel. I know maybe you guys don't share that, so I'm just putting it out there because I would like to give my opinion on it. Ballista Elephants is actually wild. That's a regular regiment. The cool part about the Ballista Elephants is that there's 50 of them compared to the 200 size of the regular infantry units for other nations. These were in the game, so this is not something new, but they have been rebalanced. So basically these units replace the standard infantry unit. They have less soldiers than your regular regiment has, 50 instead of 200. They do have a lot more initiative, 3, which is huge, and they have made them a little bit stronger overall. They get combat performance in jungles and terrain impact in jungle minus 25, so they basically perform a lot better in jungles, which is cool. They get some unique advances to urban building cost minus 5, proximity cost, cultural tradition. In essence, guys, I think the game is pretty much on its last polishing phase, but that's just my opinion. I might be wrong. I do feel a little bit worried about the late game in the EU5, but I don't know what the situation is in the current version, and I'm actually looking forward to see what you guys think is the biggest issue in the late game in your games in EU4 and what you don't want to see repeated in EU5. Love you all. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you in the next. So this is post-editing Ludi coming in. Guys, I have to add this in because this is also really, really important. Whenever you form a nation in EU5, you lose the advances from the previous nation that you were playing as, and you don't gain anything from it. Sure, you might get some new advances when you form that new nation, and you get a new map color and a new flag, right? But you don't get anything. Like, you have to research those new advances. You lose the old one. There's no reason. Like, that's kind of the reason I want ideas or some type of system that is persistent between nations, right? So you have a reason for forming that nation. Also, stuff like, oh, you need all the German provinces to form Germany. Why? Why do I need to have 300 something German provinces to form? What? Why would I even form Germany if I already have all the provinces? Make it so you need, I don't know, 50% of the provinces, and then once you form Germany, you get a claim to form the rest of the provinces. Give me a purpose, a reason why I'm forming that nation. Not only the early nations that you can form, but especially the late nations when there's really a need for a purpose for the late game for you to do something. And I'm not saying, oh, give the claim. Sure, give the claims, that's one option, right? But if you don't want to give the claims because then you think it's going to be just too strong, remember that in EU5, claims don't work the way that they do in EU4. In EU5, you have a claim on a province, you still have to manufacture that claim with your spy network before you declare the war for that claim. It's not directly you get the claim, okay? And if you just don't want to give the claim, give something else. I don't know, give some unique modifier or some sort of reason, some ability, for example, right? I'm not saying there's not nations that have that, because there are, of course, certain nations that have that sort of interaction. Like the Timurids have the ability to raise provinces and all that, which is you get when you form the nation. But that's unique cases. That's not all the nations. Most nations is just like a flag and a name change. That's it. And a color change, maybe. That's it. Nothing else. Oh, and you might lose your advances. Okay, TED Talk over. This video has been going on for way too long. I'm sorry. I just had to say it.